So over the last couple weeks, I have examined over 1,000 images of Donald Trump. In any case, the reason I did this is to get an idea of how often he wears a red tie. Per my calculations, he wears a red tie approximately 70% of the time, which I was happy saying that number till I had someone on my team double check this, and they felt the number was closer to 80% of the time. And then it even got more confusing. And one of my researchers pointed out a lot of these photos are taken on the same day, just at different times, different settings, different angles. And shouldn't we break this into time frames, maybe stick with certain decades? And then when he's wearing casual clothing, does that even fit into the percentages? So for the record, I'm just going to say the majority of the time that Donald Trump wears a necktie, it is the color red. And the question is, why? Now initially, probably like you, I thought I knew the answer. But after doing the research, and yes, we did a lot of it, it turns out the reason that he wears a red necktie is a little bit more nuanced. So what are those reasons? What's the secret behind the red necktie? Well, gentlemen, that's the subject of today's video. So in today's video, I'm going to be laying out these 5 reasons why Donald Trump wears a red necktie. But before I give you these reasons, I think it's important to understand, why does Donald Trump always wear a suit? Who inspired him? Where does his style come from? And who did he imitate? So Donald Trump was born June 14th, 1946 in Queens, New York. He was the 4th child of Fred and Mary Ann Trump, and had a bit of a reputation in his early years as being a difficult child. In fact, Fred Trump, to guide his son's behavior, actually enrolled him into the New York Military Academy. Now, having served in the Marine Corps, I met a lot of guys that had spent their formative teenage years at military academies around the world. And whether they loved it or they hated it, they all had one thing in common. They learned to pay attention to the details. These places are attended and run by people that are OCD.
You can't handle the truth!
About everything being in the right place, the small details, the ribbons on your uniform being perfectly aligned. And everyone I knew coming out of those systems, they were anal retentive about the details on uniforms and their clothing. Now, after the military academy, went to college for 2 years at Fordham, and then transferred to the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania, graduating in 1968, and right afterwards he went to work for his father. Now, when it comes to style and inspiration, you can't deny that Donald Trump wasn't influenced by his father, Fred. I mean, just look at these guys right here. It's safe to say they probably got dressed by the same tailor. Which makes sense because the Trump family business was real estate, and they were looking to move up into luxury real estate, and you got to dress the part. You're living in New York City during the 1970s and 1980s. This is the pinnacle of the real estate world, and you want to look the part of a luxury real estate mogul? Well, yeah, you're going to dress the part because your image speaks before you even get a chance to open your mouth. And Trump moved up quick. I mean, it helps that your father owns the company, but by 1971, he was the president of the company. In 1978, he moved into the most expensive real estate market in the world, Manhattan, with his family renovating the derelict Commodore Hotel. In 1988, he'd acquired the Plaza Hotel. And in 1996, he acquired 40 Wall Street, which would later be rebranded, no surprise, as the Trump Building. Now, I could go on and on about the real estate, but that's not why you're here. Let's get back to style. So in the 1970s, when we look at the images of Donald Trump, what do we see? His suit and armor is a suit and tie. It makes sense. He's standing in his father's shadow. He's working right there in New York. He needs a suit of armor that's going to allow him to get the job done and not distract him. Now, he was influenced a bit by the era, so a lot of his lapels, a lot of his ties in that time period are going to be a little bit wider. But again, the biggest influence is the man that's behind him, his father, Fred, who had his own unique style developed in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. And seriously, when you look at Fred Trump, the dude seriously had style. 3-piece suits, pocket squares. He looked every bit the established New York businessman. So it's safe to say in Donald's world, he knew that the suit screamed, I mean business. Now in the 1990s, we had an interesting development. Let's look at this jacket right here. Do you spot? I know a lot of you guys maybe don't know suits. It looks like a regular suit. This is actually a double-breasted suit. Now in case you know, today the majority of suits, 99% sold, are going to be single-breasted suits. But 100 years ago, double-breasted suits and single-breasted suits used to sell at about the same percentage. And fashion-wise, they do come back, it seems like, every other decade. And for guys in the know, the double-breasted suit actually is a bit more formal than a single-breasted suit. So why did Donald jump on it? Probably like any of us, he fell into a little bit of a fashion trend. But also, based off his age, knowing that his father probably owned quite a few, it probably was a bit nostalgic as well. In any case, it was the show The Apprentice that really put Donald Trump on the map for a national and worldwide audience.
You're fired.
Yeah, prior to that, he was known throughout the real estate world. He was a bit of a New York socialite, but The Apprentice and the success of that show put him on a whole other level. And his dark suits with bold ties gave him a visual signature. And now let's talk the political years from 2015 to present. Well, over the last decade, almost all of his suits that I've seen are single-breasted, And when it comes to color, approximately 60 to 70% of them are going to be navy blue. Now, if you know anything about suits, this makes sense because it's one of the most popular colors out there. The color is associated with authority, professionalism, and stability. Now, another color that he likes to wear is black, about 20 to 25% of the time. Now, I personally don't like black suits. I think it should be reserved for formal wear only. Now, the better option is charcoal gray, which then accounts for 10 to 15% of the suits he's been seen in. Now, what about other colors, light colored suits like what Obama wore here? And I don't know why so many people were upset with Obama's choice of a suit. I actually think it looks good. But in any case, in the last decade, it seems like Donald Trump hasn't worn anything like that, which I think is good because of his color palette and that orange hair. Yeah, it's just not going to work. It's not going to look good. Now, I promise we're about to talk about tie color, but first, let's talk about the length of his necktie. Why is it so friggin' long? Well, gents, if you've watched any of my videos, I talk about the importance of the length of your necktie falling right at about the belt buckle point. You can be an inch above, an inch below, but in general, this is the area that you want to fall. The Donald, on the other hand, his necktie, this thing goes all the way down to his crotch, which I don't know, maybe there's a hidden meaning there, but assuming that he is tying his own neckties, I'd have to say this is probably habit, and it's a belief that I sort of agree with, that it's better to have a longer necktie than too short of a necktie. And personally, I've done this, especially if I'm in a hurry. If I tie the necktie a little bit too long, I can actually tuck it into my trousers and just keep the shirt buttoned the entire time. I mean, seriously, this necktie right here is falling all the way down to my feet and you didn't even notice. And what about the tape that he's got sometimes at the back of that necktie? Well, almost all neckties have a catch in the back. And this is for catching that skinny part of the necktie and sliding it right in. However, if you're wearing your necktie really long, then that short end doesn't always reach the catch. Yet it's long enough that it can still get in the way. So I can imagine one of his assistants going over his style, going over his image before he's on camera and putting a piece of tape on the back of that necktie to try to keep it in place. So why does he choose the color red? Well, according to Psychology Today, red ties elicit perceptions of power and dominance, aligning perfectly with Trump's self-styled image as an alpha leader. So red signals power and authority. If you've watched a lot of my videos, you know I've brought up research. I've talked about this in detail. In fact, there was a classic study did about 15 years ago in which students watched the same professor give the same exact lecture, but in one video he was wearing a red sweater, in the other one a blue sweater. Well, guess what? The professor in the red sweater was considered to be much more believable. Even though it was the same guy, the same words, the same recording, they just altered the color. And this has been repeated again and again. A little bit of red in your clothing somehow convinces people that you are more believable because you are viewed as an authority. So the idea of dominance and strength being associated with a color, well, that's really attractive as to why Trump would choose that color. However, I don't think this is the reason he actually chooses his necktie color. And the reason being is he's been wearing this color since the 1960s. And don't get me wrong, I really like this reason. And somebody at some point has probably explained to him that red is a power color and that makes him come off as more dominant. So that's probably reinforced him wearing it. But I don't think it's the reason he started wearing red. Now, another reason I've seen floated out there is that red is the color of the Republican Party. And that makes a lot of sense, except for the fact, again, that he's been wearing red for a lot longer than he was associated with the Republican Party. Now, again, this could encourage him to wear red more often. He's probably had somebody on his team point this out, and it sticks with a person whenever you have other people reinforcing the way you look, saying it looks good, then it makes you look amazing. Well, you're more likely to wear that color. So I can see this as having some effect, especially at maybe an important event like an inauguration. You want to give a nod. You want to make sure that color is there. And right with that, there's the theory of patriotism. Red, white, and blue. You're wearing the blue navy suit with the white shirt with that red necktie. I mean, the only thing that could be more patriotic is him dressed up as a founding father holding an eagle and a minigun. Which seriously, how did they even get him to pose for this thing? Now, another interesting reason that I've heard, especially if you're into marketing, is brand recognition. The reality is if Donald shaved his head, if he wasn't wearing a suit, if he was walking down the street in a t-shirt and jeans, maybe grows a goatee, puts on a baseball cap, I bet a lot of people would not recognize him. Gents, when it comes to branding, when it comes to image, it was The Apprentice that really, again, put him on the map. And what do we expect to see? Donald Trump in that dark colored suit with a red necktie with that white dress shirt. But again, is this the reason that he started wearing the red necktie? No, I don't think so. The real reasons, and yes, I think that there are two. One of them I revealed earlier, and that is his father, Fred, and the influence of his style on Donald. I mean, look at how often Fred wore a red necktie. I think we underestimate the power of people around us, and his father, for many years, was the most influential person in his life. He saw the way his father walked in a room, commanded respect, and it just looked good with his complexion, with his colors, so Donald would follow suit. And the second reason why he would stick with red, he probably got some early compliments, And it became part of his image. It became a habit. It became a go-to color. He probably has dozens, if not hundreds of options in his wardrobe, and they're all very similar. So for him, this is a no-brainer. It's a go-to uniform that he believes makes him look great. And therefore, as we've talked about it in clothes cognition, you perform better when you feel you're wearing the right uniform, when you feel your clothing looks good on you. And so for him, it was a loop. He had his uniform and he would just default to it. Agree? Disagree? Wishing I would have done this video on Kamala? Yeah, whatever. Guys, go to the next video right here. I got you covered. I'm not going to talk politics here, but yeah, this one was an interesting one. Had a lot of fun with it. Let me know if you agree, disagree, and let's just go to something more controversial. Let's talk about why were the Nazis so stylish? Some people down there are going to say, I can't believe you talked about Trump. Okay, how about we talk about Nazis? Let's go, yeah, let's have some fun right here, guys. And there's no connection here, but yeah, check it out. Good video. I think so. Boom, right there.